back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show with your hosts, Joey and Hallie Baird.
It's the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. The WisconsinVegetableGardener.com is your destination for your gardening problems, questions, and all of that. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And breaking news, we have a guest this week. She called in, so we're moments away. So let's go to the ivorganics.com hotline and bring in our next guest, Holly.
Rhonda Fleming is an author, garden writer, and passionate about pollinators. She currently resides in Minnesota. She's the author of a new pollinator book, Pollinator Friendly Gardening, Gardening for Bees, Butterflies, and Other Pollinators. And her website is thegardenbuzz.com. Welcome to the program, Rhonda.
Hi, Joey. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to join us on the program and share some of your garden knowledge with Holly, myself, and all of our listeners.
Great.
Well, I want to start out with people, for people who are not into gardening as much as you and Holly and myself are, what's the basic definition of a pollinator?
Well, a pollinator, they're usually insects, but they're any kind of animal that transfers, that while they're going about eating, they transfer pollen from one flower to another, usually on their body, or their wings, their feathers. In this case, usually with bees, they carry it on their body from one flower to another. So it's the transfer of pollination, which a transfer of pollen, which helps to fertilize the flower, and then we get fruits from seeds from that.
Okay. Are there bad pollinators, maybe insects that pollinate but cause other problems in the garden? And what do you do to control them?
Well, I think lots of cases there times are that bees are confused for wasps. I think a lot of people think that there's this generic type insect, it's yellow and black stripes like that, and they call it a bee. And in many cases, it is a wasp. And a wasp is a pollinator, but they're more problematic in our gardens because of the possibility of stings. Wasps can sting more than once, and sometimes people accidentally will, come upon a nest and disturb them, and the results are kind of awful. In my garden, I have a lot of paper wasps, and in fact, they congregate in an area right by where we happen to have our patio and eat. But for the most part, they're in my vegetable garden all the time. I know that they're doing good things as well as kind of being a little threatening. For me, I just give them a wide berth. But I'm a common sense gardener, and I think, if they're in a place where they're worrying you or there's traffic, pets, children, you're completely, within your bounds to go ahead and treat for them. Sometimes it's good to call in a professional because they can be kind of tricky to deal with. If you decide to do it yourself, make sure you read all the instructions and get a little advice on the internet about how to do that first.
Now, with those wasps, those paper wasps, correct me if I'm wrong, they are beneficial because they're eating insects, or what is their main diet that in the garden?
Well, wasps are actually carnivorous, and so they're not going for the same thing that bees are going for in many cases. But they do eat nectar and things like that also. Sometimes they go in and they're eating things like cabbage worms. So when I see them, around my vegetable garden, I think, okay, cool. They don't seem to be very aggressive. I can work right alongside them usually, and nothing happens. The first time I've ever been stung was last year, and that was by a bumblebee.
Yeah. Well, that's a good thing because cabbage worms can be one of the nemesis of most vegetable garden growers.
And another thing, when you have more insects in your garden, that's you have to kind of think about that as bird food, and birds are another great controller of pests like cabbage worms.
Absolutely. When it comes to plants that need pollen.
So there's a different number of bee species. Most people know of the honeybee. There's a species called the mason bee. What's the difference, and how do you know which is which?
Well, mason bees, you can definitely tell the difference because they're beautiful. They're a beautiful metallic shade of blue, sometimes green. The ones I see in my garden are blue, and they're called mason bees because they lay their eggs in little holes in the garden, maybe in a piece of wood where there's an old hole, like a beetle has drilled a hole in there, or in stems, things like that. And when they lay their eggs, after they have laid them in this little tubular spot, they seal it up with mud, and that's the reason why they call them a mason bee, kind of like, bricks and mortar. But they're really cool in other ways because they're really gentle, and they're actually more efficient than honeybees. They're 100 times more efficient, and their pollination style is different. Instead of just kind of picking at things and flying back and forth like a honeybee, the mason bee kind of does what they call this kind of flop and wallow style of pollination. They kind of fling themselves into a blossom and wriggle around, and then they go back and forth between the blooms on the same plant. And this style they have, this flopping style and this thing they do, they're kind of slinging pollen off as they just acquire more and sling it around, and it actually turns out to be more efficient than a honeybee. It's hard to explain.
Now the honey. Go ahead.
They're used commercially, or not used, but people do actually manage them. They don't live in hives. They live in they have blocks of wood with holes drilled in them, and they try to manage them in many cases in orchards because that's where they're the most efficient for apples and plums, cherries, things like that.
Now you can buy or create devices in which you can essentially attract the mason bee into your garden or backyard, right?
Yeah, you can do these. I think this year in the garden centers, I've seen tons of all these cute little bee houses, and those are the houses are supposed to attract mason bees, and in other cases they will also attract leafcutter bees. And leafcutter bees use little pieces of leaves to line their nest versus the mud that the mason bees use. But yeah, there's a lot of opportunities to make these little houses, and if you do put them in your garden, it's really important to have them either face east or just a little bit southeast, because when those little bee larvae develop and the baby bees come out, it's important that they come out into that gentle eastern sun, not a blazing western hot sun. And you will also, with those bee houses, maybe want to tilt them down just a little bit so water or rain doesn't collect in there and create fungus and other problems.
And I want to make clear that our listeners understand that the mason bee, they lay their larvae and they seal up the hole, and the parents die, and this larva sets over winter and then emerges in the spring.
Yes.
Unlike the traditional honeybee, which goes in the hive and hibernates and then comes out in the spring.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess just to make sure we're clear on that, honeybees don't actually hibernate. They do go into their hive, but through the entire winter, they all take turns doing this kind of shivering behavior that keeps the center of the hive really warm, and they move back and forth and keep that at a constant temperature. So the bees don't get to rest, and honeybees don't get to rest in the winter.
One of the hardest working insects that we
they
have.
Are, I think, maybe the hardest working, yeah.
So when it comes to a plant that needs pollinating, what can we do now to get ready for spring? And it's not just flowers, there's shrubs, bushes, and trees that rely on pollinators as well.
Well, actually, it's kind of a back and forth thing. The pollinators are relying on those plants too. Spring's a really difficult time for a lot of pollinators because they're emerging, and let's take the bumblebee for example. They're one of the first to emerge. These young bumblebees come out, and you're hungry. You're looking for food, and food sources can be kind of scarce anywhere in the spring, but especially up north when it comes to our garden. I think that we have such erratic weather now, and we also we never can predict how long that snow load is going to be there. I think that spring is kind of a time when cold climate gardeners kind of sit it out. They don't want to invest a lot of money or energy towards something that they're not sure of. But we really do need to think about planting more spring blooming plants because these pollinators really need them. One way we can do that is with ephemerals. Those are native plants that they only come out for a few weeks, but they do come out very early. Things like bloodroot and trout lily, trillium, things like that. Those are great plants. And then some of those little spring blooming, what do we want to call them? More like garden type bulbs, scilla, that little blue flower that comes out, crocus, things like that. those are really important in that early time when they're searching for food. And the most important thing is probably that the most prevalent food right at that point are dandelions. And if you can, try to spare a few dandelions at the edge of your yard or in a more unobtrusive place that you can feed the bees.
And that's what we always tell people. Leave the dandelions alone, because the first thing, and you know people just like we do, the first time they see it, they run out and spray that chemical on them, and the bees get in it and they take it back to the hive, and it ends poorly for everybody.
Everybody. I tend to think dandelions are pretty cheerful looking come spring.
Yeah.
So now you're in a similar climate like Wisconsin, and you've traveled a lot and lived in various places. What would you say was the biggest challenge with gardening in Minnesota?
Well, that first winter, all that snow, I couldn't believe that it showed up in early November and didn't leave until April.
Yeah.
Since then, I have a new strategy. I leave in the winter.
Yeah.
That helps. But as far as my gardening, I think the biggest challenge is with the short growing season, it feels like when those first couple of weeks when you start going to the garden center, there's that, it feels so frantic. Everything is so deep, it's so compressed at that one spot. You feel like, oh, if I don't do this, that'll be it. I won't get my gardening done. So I think sometimes I get a little anxious and I plant things a little too soon. Or, if I don't get things planted, I kind of beat myself up and think, oh, you dummy, you're not going to get the garden now. I'm a little bit more relaxed about it. But those first couple of years here were, it was a real shift in my how I garden and my thinking.
There's a saying, I'd much rather plant my crop the first time with my neighbor than the second time with my neighbor.
Yeah, I heard that one.
Where can people find more information about you, Rhonda, and the fantastic book all about pollinators and getting them in your garden?
Well, you can read my columns in the Star Tribune, the Minneapolis Star Tribune. I have a pollinators column in Northern Gardener magazine also. As for my book, Pollinator Friendly Gardening, it's available in bookstores, chain bookstores, independent bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, they'll be glad to order it for you. You can find it on Amazon. And, any more information, The Garden Buzz is my blog. I will confess my blog's not as active as it should be, but my Facebook page, The Garden Buzz, you're welcome to go on Facebook and like that. And I tend to be a little bit better about keeping that one current. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I do a lot of garden content on there, and that's just at Rhonda Fleming Hayes. So lots of places to find me.
And you may not be that active on thegardenbuzz.com, but you've got hours and days worth of content that's very beneficial to everybody.
Lots of content and ways to contact me if you have a question. I speak at garden clubs and various things. My next appearance will be at the Minnesota Energy Fair on September 9th. I'll be doing a workshop there.
Well, Rhonda, we greatly appreciate you taking time out of your day to join Holly and myself and sharing a lot of your garden knowledge with all of us.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me.
If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.